Welcome everyone to Goodknit. For those that are brand new here, I'm Sherry and I am a Canadian expat that is living in Amsterdam. Today is podcast episode 24 and it's just going to be a very traditional episode today. I have two finished objects, one of which I'm wearing right now, and that's my Ppoppo jacket. I have a nearly there Braidy Loop cardigan, so hopefully by next episode that will be a finished object. And then I have two brand new whips and a few plans and acquisitions to talk through, and probably more acquisitions than you're maybe used to from me, but nothing crazy. I said in my last podcast episode that my goal was to start recording every 2 weeks instead of 3. As you can tell, this episode is 3 weeks since my last one, so that didn't quite work out. And it's just because my friend was here to visit for about a week, all the way from Canada. And I just really wanted to make the most of the time with her. I obviously didn't want to stop and say, I need to record a podcast. And also I wasn't doing a ton of knitting while she was here, just to really, enjoy the time that I had. Before we get started today, there's sort of two things that I just want to mention. First is the fancy Pita skirt that I test knit for has now officially been released on Ravelry, so you can buy that pattern. It was previously only in German in her Knits from Paris book. She released it, I think, 2 weeks ago now on Ravelry. If you are interested in that fancy Pita skirt that I knit, you can now go there. I'll include the link in the show notes below. The second thing I wanted to mention is my friend Melanie and I have decided to do a knitting meetup in Amsterdam on Sunday, December 1st from 10:30 to 12:30 at this super charming, cozy cafe called Cafe Brecht here in the center of Amsterdam. It has a super cozy kind of grandma vibe, like grandma's living room. It's got all these little old couches and chairs, and anytime I do a knitting date with people, it's usually the go-to location that I suggest because I just love knitting there. Even though it's a little bit dark, you need your neck light. So they've agreed to host us. Space will be limited because the location can only hold so many people. So there will be tickets. I will include the Eventbrite link below so that you can go grab those for yourself. I'm really excited to host my first knitting meetup, and I really hope to meet more knitters in person there. And if we have enough interest, our hope is that it's an event that we can start to host monthly. So heading into finished objects, the first one that I want to share today is the one that I'm wearing, and that is my Ppoppo jacket by Aegyoknit. I knit it in a size 1 on 5.5mm needles. The pattern calls for 6, but I think because I wasn't using the suggested yarn from the pattern, I wasn't able to hit gauge with the 6mm needles. For the yarn, I used the Lana VIP yarn, which is DK weight, and it's 80% merino, 20% cashmere, 50 grams for 200 meters. Yeah. And it is color 13737, which I think is called Rust, if it does have a name. And then I held it with the Assayer Soft Silk Mohair, which is 80% goat, 25% silk, and it is 25 grams for 212 meters. So these two together made this really beautiful combination. I just really could not be happier with the overall color and yarn on this. I mean, this VIP yarn is so luxurious. I am very anxious to use it on its own, maybe in a DK weight sweater soon. They do have like a nice ochre mustard curry color that I want to try. I think also the cost on this is really good. I bought this in Lithuania on my trip back in May. I paid $6.25 per ball, so €6.25. For a yarn with cashmere in it, that feels like a pretty good deal. Whereas this mohair for me was €11. This project is pretty much all I've been working on for the past month. It took me almost exactly a month to the day to finish, and for the most part, I didn't work on anything else while I was doing this. I kind of had the odd project here and there that I was tinkering on. This, I was just very excited to get off my needles and be able to wear, so I really wanted to buckle down and focus on it. Which, working on double moss stitch in this pattern for a month definitely got a little bit old quite quickly, because you also need to pay attention to what you're doing as you're working on it. While it was a bit of a meditative knit when I was just kind of working back and forth for a bit on smaller sections, once I joined this to kind of work under the arms, it just really took some brain power because there was a bit more going on. Let's talk about the construction of this. For the Ppoppo jacket, you cast on the back panel, which is a kind of trapezoid shape that you work out with increases. Then you pick up for the shoulders, classic drop shoulder style. You knit up the front until you get to the underarms. And then for the underarms, you join the whole body. So then you have a lot of stitches on your needle. And you end up casting on, I think, 9 additional stitches in my size, and then adding in these faux side seams, which then end up working up the arm. Then it's basically working down, and when you finish the body, you then go ahead and pick up stitches all the way around the back, and you do your I-cord in one go across the whole body. I said in the last episode, I was not expecting that to be that painful because I had just done the Milady's dress, which was on 3.25 millimeter needles, fingering weight yarn, and quite a substantial piece. But I will say this kind of gave a run for the money. It was a lot of stitches still, and when you're doing it all in one go, it just felt very time consuming. I think it took me about 2.5, 3 days to finish. It was a while ago because I decided when I finished the body, I just wanted to do the I-cord right away. I could also see how this was fitting. I worked the pattern pretty much exactly to what it said. So for the size 1, I finished up when I did the last round of body decreases, and then did the kind of final setup rows before the I-cord. So the pattern says the body on the size 1 should be 42 centimeters. So the size 1 and 2 are 42 centimeters, the size 3 is 50, the size 4 is 52 centimeters, which feels like a very big range in terms of length. Not sure why size 1 and 2 are so much smaller. I was a little bit concerned with how long this was. My body was already at 43, 44 centimeters before I started the I-cord. I decided to just go with it and kind of trust the pattern on this and hope that it worked out. I was also expecting it to grow a lot in blocking, so I figured it would all be okay. So I think overall fit on this, let me even it out here, is really nice. It did grow a ton when I blocked it. So I would say pre-blocking, it was probably up here. And then the only thing is I wish I had maybe done a bit more on the back so that like if I kind of pull it back a little bit there, it will sit lower, but it is a little bit higher than I would like it to be. There's no way I'm going back and adjusting this at this point. I think if I were to knit it again, or if I could give you guys some advice, it would be to maybe just add a little bit more length, like, I don't know, 3 to 4 centimeters, so that your back has a little bit more of a curve to it. I think the length is fine. I will tend to wear it with high-waisted things, and I will tuck my shirts in a little bit, so I'm not overly concerned, but I do wish the body was just a tiny bit longer. It did grow a lot though when I blocked, so it was about 44 centimeters. I got it to 47 centimeters in length. And then originally when I was blocking the sleeves, I was worried because they seemed like they grew a lot. They went from 32 to about 39. I just measured before filming this, and like they sit very low, but the sleeves themselves are back to about 34 centimeters, so they grew too. And I think the only reason they seem so long is because the rest of the sweater grew so much. So I didn't measure the kind of like body circumference because it doesn't make sense on this piece. But I would say it really grew width-wise. Like these are kind of bat wingy, which they weren't before blocking. And apologies for not getting any pre-blocking video. My friend was here, I was distracted. I just really wanted to get this in a bath and dry so that I could hopefully film this podcast. Yeah, I have no pre-blocking photos. If you are going to knit this, maybe just be aware that the double moss stitch does grow quite a bit, and therefore maybe you want to do a mid-project block before you start your I-cord. I probably would have been wise to do that to make sure I was 100% happy, but I was in a groove and I just really wanted to push forward and get this done. In terms of yarn quantities, I originally bought 5 balls of the VIP and 6 balls of the mohair. I ended up only using 4 of the mohair. Technically, it looks like I dipped a tiny bit into the 5th, but it's like 4.08 balls. So let's say it's 4 because I barely touched that 5th ball. And then I used 3.84 balls of the VIP. So overall, didn't take a ton of yarn. Could have obviously added a bit more length given how much I have, but now I think I have enough left over that I could make an accessory. And the final cost for this project were 73 euros and 30 cents. So the mohair itself was the most expensive part. This was about 40 something euros in mohair, whereas the VIP was only 25 euros. Like I said, the cashmere kind of blend of that VIP is really nice for a very affordable price. Overall, this project went really smoothly. I think the biggest challenge I had was just keeping the double moss stitch pattern. I think it was really easy at times to get distracted, and especially, let's say, on the arms where you continue this double seam. You have these stitches in the middle here, so then it can get confusing when you're switching between the seam and the stitches on the rest of the arm, because what would happen sometimes is I would end up messing up around in those middle stitches, and then that would throw off everything. I do have, I don't even know where, and I'm not going to find them. I do have a few points where I definitely messed up and did like maybe 3 knits stacking on each other, but then caught it and was like, okay, I'm not going to go back and fix it because it's under the arm. This pattern itself is really forgiving. So as long as it's not a whole section where you've stacked stitches, if it's just 1 or 2 here and there, it's fine. And I think this is the only point where I actually made that mistake and didn't fix it. In all other cases, especially where it was on the body and it would have been really noticeable, I did go back and actually correct those when I did it. Overall, I don't think I really had any challenges on this. It was definitely like an easy knit. I love that at the end I did not have to go do a whole button band. Could maybe argue the I-cord is more painful or just as painful. It just felt a little bit more approachable to me. And then you do the I-cord finishes, you do the sleeves, and you're just ready to go block it and wear it. Yesterday was the first time that I wore this to work, and really cozy. I was kind of worried that the sleeve length would be getting in the way while I'm typing on my keyboard, but it seems to be okay. I'm gonna wear it around for a bit and see if that's something I need to go in and adjust, maybe shorten by a centimeter for the sleeves. I think it's gonna be okay, and you can really like adjust that just simply by pulling it up around your neck a little bit more, and then it instantly shortens the sleeves. I think depending how drapey and slopey you wear this, you can kind of adjust how it's sitting on your body. I would say definitely one of my new favorite knits. I think I'm gonna get a ton of wear out of this. I am really glad to just have a nice throw-on cardigan in my wardrobe. All my other ones right now feel quite dressy and like something I need to pair with a skirt or something. This I think is just gonna go with t-shirts, jeans. Can also wear it over skirts and dresses, but it's not really the intent. I just want this to be a casual piece. I also think it works very well in my autumn color palette. Then finished object number 2 is something I showed last time, and that is my penny gloves. I think in the last episode I was nearly done the first glove. I've since gone on and finished both and blocked them. Let me just put them on. I knit these exactly to pattern, so it is a pattern by PetiteKnit. They are knit on 3mm needles using a sport weight yarn, and I knit the cuff to be the 12 centimeters specified. Then you do some increases for the kind of thumb to sit, so you increase to here, then you work the palm, I guess, and then come back and do the thumb. These took me about 3 weeks to finish, and that's only because I was really focused on the Ppoppo jacket. This was sort of my knit to take, to the airport to pick up my friend, or I would work on it late at night when I knew my brain couldn't handle the moss stitch and I just wanted a simple stockinette project. These are gloves that I've really wanted for a while. I think they've been on my to knit list for at least 2 years. I bought the yarn last year in a Garntopia sale. So it's just been sitting there ready to go. And for some reason, I just haven't really been feeling accessories. I was actually looking at my Ravelry, and other than my Kindle holder or my Kobo holder that I made this summer, I haven't knit an actual wearable accessory since March of this year when I knit a hat. And I guess that makes sense because in the summer you're probably not knitting a lot of accessories. But I've been so into garments right now that accessories aren't even on my mind. And it is very satisfying to actually knit something and then just have it fly off the needles and be done. So if you want a project that maybe would only take actually a few days, I think on my second glove, I was much more dedicated to getting it done. I want to say it was like a 3 or 4 day project with, an hour here, an hour there. Quickly talking about the yarn that I used, I had bought the Lana Alva yarn, which is 100% alpaca. It says light fingering, color 112, which is this kind of rich mauve brown. And I held it double. So I really only used, I think, like 1.2 balls on this. So I have quite a lot left over. No idea what I'm going to do with this. I really hate when you have quite a large quantity left, but there's nothing that you can actually make. And I don't tend to make scrappy projects for myself. Oh, and this is 25 grams by 175 meters per ball. I'd say the biggest benefit of this project is the cost. So I was looking, and to be fair, I bought this yarn last year. I have no idea what the Norwegian kroner to euro exchange rate was at the time that I bought it. But when I was looking at the conversion yesterday, it was basically telling me that each ball of this was about €2.70, which means these gloves came to €5.40 total. And that seems like a really, really good deal. I think for the quality of this yarn, it's super soft. It was really nice to work with. Yeah, you're definitely not going to buy a pair of nice fingerless gloves like this in retail for €5. So for a quick knit, I would say this yarn is great. It's very affordable. I'm excited to have them personally for riding on the bike here in Amsterdam. It's just nice to have a little bit of warmth on your hand. And then I figure I can also, on colder days, use these as a layering piece under proper mittens or something, just to have that additional warmth. I knit these on Magic Loop, which I am reminded that I really despise Magic Loop. And I think part of the problem here was I was using my 3mm fixed circulars. I think just because I was using my other 3mm for a different project. And that meant that I couldn't make the left-hand needle where your stitches are smaller. So typically if I do Magic Loop, I try to have that needle be a smaller size so that the stitches slide nicely. And then you have your working needle the size that you need it to be. With the fixed circulars, I couldn't do that. So sliding the stitches back and forth, especially once you added some stitches for the thumb, was a bit challenging. And just in general, trying to avoid ladders is a bit of pain. And it worked out. I actually think I was saying last episode, this is the most ladder-free version, I think, of Magic Loop that I've ever done. It's maybe a tiny bit more noticeable on this side, but I used the trick that I mentioned in my tips and tricks video that I posted about a week and a half ago. And that is I hold the front and back needle as if they're one when I'm switching sides to start on the kind of new half of stitches. You can go and watch the example that I put in that video. Using that has really helped. A viewer also mentioned in that video that something they do, and I didn't have a chance to try it here, but instead of kind of pulling tighter on the first stitch of that second half, pull a little bit tighter on the second stitch, and that should also help with laddering. So if anybody else has tried that method and it worked for you, let me know in the comments. I will give that a try the next time that I do Magic Loop, which hopefully won't be anytime soon. I'm not in a rush. The other thing on the penny gloves, I would just say be very careful how tightly you do the bind off here. On one of the gloves, mine is definitely a little bit tighter than it should be, which actually after blocking turned out to be fine because I think I have a fairly small hand. So the fact that these are one size, I would say they're a little bit loose on me. So the tight bind off was okay, but if you are maybe on the medium to larger size, you might struggle to get your hand in these if you do that bind off too tightly. So just be very careful about that. Maybe a stretchy bind off would be a little bit better because yeah, it does get a little bit tight. I also think for mine, they are going to stretch a little bit with wear. To make these again, I don't know if I will. I don't know how many fingerless gloves I need, but if I make them again, I personally would maybe do a few less stitches just because my size of hand can handle that. And then that way they won't grow too much with wear and blocking. You may have noticed, and hopefully you've noticed, that the quality of my editing is getting a little bit better with each video. I've really been putting a concerted effort the last few months into trying to up my editing game. I finally decided to upgrade from iMovie and use a more professional editing suite. I've been improving my editing skills by taking online classes through the partner of today's video, Skillshare. So if you don't know, Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives with thousands of classes led by industry experts. If there's a topic or skill you want to learn, chances are you can find it on Skillshare. They have everything from film and illustration through to productivity and starting your own business. You can even find classes for crafts like ours. So in addition to knitting, there's also sewing, crochet, and embroidery. So if you've been thinking about picking up a new fiber art, maybe that is a great place to start. With fall in full swing, it's the perfect time to pick up a new skill. And now that I've completed my video editing course, I'm personally excited to put more focus on my design skills. That's why I'm planning to take a class on Canva with Maggie Stara, in the hopes of building a more consistent brand for Goodknits and creating more compelling visuals for my YouTube channel. So thank you so much to Skillshare for partnering with me on today's video. The first 500 people to use the link in my description will get a free 1-month trial to Skillshare, so get started today. So let's shift focus over to my whips, and I'm really hoping that this is the last time you're going to see this project as a whip, and that is my Braidy Loop cardigan by Other Loops. And since cardigans are quite difficult to hold up and share because they just kind of look messy, I am going to go ahead and throw this on instead of my Ppoppo jacket. So for the most part, you have seen a lot of this progress in the last podcast episode. You saw that I had finished my first sleeve. I have since blocked this piece, and just a quick view of it. I think blocking wise, it looks really good. The parts that are new are I did the button band, which I've been saying for a while. I was very scared about this button band because I'd never done a double knit button band before. And let me be the first to correct myself to say, this pattern doesn't even have a double knit button band. So that's my bad. This actually just has a ribbed button band. So you do double knitting for the first couple rounds at the bottom, and then the final 2 rounds to finish, but the button band itself is just ribbing. So very easy. You integrate, where are they? You integrate the buttonholes as you go. So there are 4 holes that you place evenly along this band. That was a little bit tedious, but overall, I think within a couple hours, I had finished the side of the button band. And I think this took me 2 days of knitting. I did just sort of buckle down and focus on it. So took a break from everything else and said, I just want to get it out of the way so that I can move on. So I finished that button band, I think like a couple days after the last podcast that I shared. And then this project kind of just sat. I was really focused on the Ppoppo jacket, and I didn't want to really distract. I wasn't in a huge rush for this, so then I figured I'll just finish it when I finish it. And I was actually expecting to show this project just with the button band being done and the arm not having been started. But then I had a lunch break the other day where I decided, let's just at least throw the arm onto some needles. And I'm happy to report that I've actually made really good progress on this arm. So this is a couple days of knitting. I decided, last night I kind of was home. I was just watching TV, and really tried to finish the majority of the arms. So I think I have 2 decreases left. Then I know I have some extra stitches to do before moving into the ribbing. And once that is done, this cardigan will be complete, and then I just need to get buttons, which my husband is going to come with me on the weekend, and we're going to pick the final buttons for this, and then I can consider this project done. So maybe just going back to some quick housekeeping details on this, because I feel like I've talked about this project so much that you guys are sick of hearing about it, but I'm knitting this in the Assayer Jensen yarn paired with their soft silk mohair, both in the color 2S, which are these like grayish white colors. And this is on 4.5mm needles, which is what the pattern called for. Then the ribbing is on 4mm. For some reason, I keep thinking that this project has been on my needles for so long. I have this memory of starting it in April, which I think I technically did, but then because I had only done a tiny strip and put it down for so long to focus on my Milady's dress, I changed the start date in my Ravelry to June 15th. So I've still been working on it for a long time. It's been like 4.5 months at this point, but I also haven't been knitting monogamously on it. And in the summer, I wasn't in a rush to get it. So a lot of the progress that's been made has just been over the last few months. I'm just ready, honestly, to be done with this project. It was really enjoyable at the start. I feel like I just powered through kind of the saddle shoulder shaping and getting through the body. But the sleeves and the button band just feel like they're going on forever. And if I'm being totally honest on this project, which I always try to be, I am not thrilled about the color of this. And I know I've said it before, and I was kind of like, oh, it'll be fine. But even when I look at pictures that I've taken of this piece compared to something like the Ppoppo jacket, this color just falls so flat. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. It maybe worked out for the best. Like, originally I wanted more of a mid-gray tone, which probably would have been even worse. But it's just, yeah, this whitish gray, it's just so cool. And it's not really what I wanted out of this cardigan. So I have a feeling that this will be a piece that I do attempt to over dye at some point, maybe into a Bordeaux color. I'll talk a bit more about dyeing in a second. Well, not in a second. I'll talk more about dyeing as part of the acquisitions that I have. I think the color is not contributing well to the fact of me wanting to finish this, because I'm just not really excited at this point to wear it in its current state. And I know I will wear it, but I don't love it. I already don't love it. And I don't think it's the pattern itself or the fit. It just really comes down to the color that I picked. So that's something that hopefully I can change and fix to be a little bit happier with it. Going back quickly to the button band on this, I did follow everything to pattern except for, instead of on the last stitch that where you pick up from the except for the last stitch, which is using the picked up stitches from the needle, I didn't do her method where she knits and then pulls a stitch over. I opted to just knit 2 through the back loop, just because it felt a little bit more intuitive. It was what I was seeing in other button band videos. And I think for the most part, like, you can't really tell. It does have a little bit of a, I don't know, twisted kind of look. But then across the back, I did try the method mentioned in the pattern, and it seemed to give the exact same look. So I don't know if what I did changed that, but I actually think it kind of adds a nice little detail. I'm not upset about it at all. I'm glad that I made the decision I did. And I also kind of struggled on the button band to get going. She says to start with an Italian cast on, you do 11 stitches and then you kind of start working. And for some reason, I had 4 false starts on this. I couldn't tell how to actually do the Italian cast on to start this. So I ended up finding PetiteKnit's champagne cardigan tutorial. So the one by Kimmy, I forget her last name. If you just go to the PetiteKnit Champagne Cardigan page, you will see the start of the button band there. That is exactly as written in the other loops pattern, so I included that link in my Ravelry. That was helpful for me to just have a visual aid to get started since I'd never done it before. And then for whatever reason, once I had all my stitches on my needle, I had one case where I ended up using the wrong end of my yarn, and I used the tail instead of the working yarn. So when I got to the end of a row, I didn't have the right yarn end. So I had to start over. And then I had another case, well, twice, where I ended up with one too few stitches. No idea how I did that. Counting to 11 is not that hard. And then the fourth time, I have no idea what happened. I think I dropped a stitch. So it took me a little bit to get going. Once I got going, got through the double knitting, the ribbing itself was very easy. I followed the pickup rate listed in the pattern, which was every second stitch. And I was a little bit worried based on some other comments from people that that might actually be too many stitches. But I actually think it turned out perfect. I didn't have any issues. I think the tension is nice. It doesn't feel like the button band is too big. So at least for me, picking up every second stitch worked perfectly. And I think the ribbing look versus a double knit button band, which I've never done before, so I can't compare, but I think the ribbing looks really nice. I know some other viewers have also just gone ahead and done double knit button bands and also been very happy. But if you find that intimidating and you want to just stick with the pattern as written, go for it. I think it looks really nice. So that's kind of the full update on the Braidy Loop cardigan. Yeah, I think this will, mark my words, be a finished object by the next video. I only have this much left to go and then blocking it and buttons, and then I'm done. I just love having this Ppoppo jacket back on. It's like so cozy, so happy. Next whip is I only talked, I think, about the swatch in the last episode, and that is the staple skirt that I've been working on. And this is a pattern by New Wave Knitting or Jeanette Gaudreau. I am using Retrosario Rosa Pomar Vovo yarn, which has the cutest label in the color 07, which is this kind of rosy plum grape color. Not quite exactly what I expected when I got it, but very happy. And this was my swatch that I did up on 4mm needles. So this is a pattern that is just kind of custom tailor-made. You put in your measurements. You can literally use any yarn, any gauge, whatever works for you. So I knew I wanted a kind of sport DK weight, ideally with a tighter gauge because it's the skirt. I didn't want it to be gapey and kind of see-through. And I'm really happy with the decision that I made. I think, I'm only working on the waistband so far, so I'm through all the stitches. You do your pickup, and then you have your folded over edge, and then now I just need to actually go ahead, cut my elastic to the correct size, sew it together, which I have to do by hand, and then actually knit it into the waistband. So I've been procrastinating. I kind of finished the skirt about a week ago, or this waistband a week ago, and just really didn't want to deal with hand sewing the waistband and then trying to sew in the waistband at night. So I've been waiting for the weekend so I can do this during the day. The pattern, basically what you do is it does all the calculations in it. So you put your gauge, you put your own body measurements, how long you want the skirt to be, what your waist is, your hip, and then the pattern will calculate all the correct instructions for you. So for me, it told me to cast on a specific number of stitches and then do roughly, I think, 13 rounds, a purl round, another 13 before folding this down. It also instructs you to cast on with a bigger needle or two needles held together so that you have kind of a slightly bigger hole here that is easy to spot when you have to sew down these ends together. I just used two needles held together to do my cast on, so definitely it is kind of curling, and it does have a very, very clear hole within each stitch so that I'll know how to pick up that edge. And once I'm through this kind of sewn down waistband, I figure this is going to be a pretty simple knit. It's just going to be in the round with some increases, probably some decreases at some point. And I believe I said I want it to be around 45 centimeters, which was, I took all my favorite mini skirts from my wardrobe, laid them out on the bed, and then measured them, and then kind of picked the one that I thought was best suited to this skirt, and that was around 45 centimeters. So this, now that some of these other projects are off my plate, I think will be one of my main focuses, because I would just like to get this done so I can wear it. And honestly, if the fit is good on this, I'm already dreaming about a tweed version, either in the Noro Madara, maybe sake wool, or the Asayer tweed. They also have a lot of really nice options. I know My Favorite Things Knitwear just came out with skirt number 1, either came out with or is coming out with. And it looks very, very similar to this pattern. She's using the Asayer tweed. So I figure because they have a very similar look, I probably don't need to buy a whole other pattern. I will just change my gauge for this one if I'm happy, and then knit it in a different material. Slow progress, but it's getting somewhere. I also accidentally bought the pajama elastic, which I don't know if you can tell with the black. It has these lines in it, and it feels like it's going to be a little bit harder to actually hand sew into because it just feels stiffer. So we're gonna see how that goes. I might need to go ahead and buy a different waistband. I didn't mean to buy this one. I just accidentally selected the wrong option. And then the final whip I have, which is brand new to you guys, is the Winnie sweater by Woozy by Celine, who also has a YouTube channel here. And honestly, this was not on my radar for my fall knitting plans. I had no intention of knitting this. But then Lee, who I sent my Tolsta tea to, very kindly gifted me some yarn. So she sent me the Asayer Eco Soft in, what color is this? Color E4S, which is this kind of dark chocolatey brown gray. And this is 50% alpaca, 44% organic cotton, 50 grams, 125 meters. So really interesting blend. I've never worked with an alpaca cotton blend, and it definitely has, I don't even know how to describe the feel. It's almost like a little bit, it's soft, but also a little bit oily. She sent me 6 balls of this, and I just really wanted to get it cast on and try using it. So I did immediately swatch once I got the yarn. So this is kind of how it works up. And I was off gauge for this, so I ended up going down in needle size. It's supposed to be on 5.5 millimeter needles. I'm doing it on 5, and that means my stitch gauge is correct, but my row gauge is too off. I am too loose compared to hers. I'll just need to be mindful of that as I'm working the body, probably try it on before I'm done all the increases. And I am finished the German short rows, and I'm now moving on to just the raglan increases. So that will be my next. I kind of stopped this the other day because I really need to put it on bigger needles, but the only other bigger needle I have is in my staple skirt right now, so I'm not sure what to do with that. I'm gonna see if I can get a little bit further with this size, and then at some point it's gonna be uncomfortable. This yarn is a little bit tricky to work with because it's so fuzzy, and it has like these little fibers in it that kind of get in the way. I would describe it maybe a little bit like working with boucle yarn, which was especially challenging when this has an interesting neck construction. So it kind of has this short funnel neck. And in order to get it to not roll, you do a non-rolling row. I forget exactly how she describes it, but basically what you do is you slip one stitch, pull up the purl bump 2 down, pass 1 over, and you do a round like that. I've never done it before. And of course I was doing it at night, so it was slightly dark in this yarn. I definitely did not pick up exactly the right round, and I figured this yarn's gonna be really forgiving, so I didn't really care. You can't really tell from the inside. So it would be like the second row here. I don't personally notice it. I think also the neckline looks pretty good, but it was super challenging to find that purl bump in this yarn, especially because it's shifting between the light brown and the dark brown. So we'll see how this yarn goes. I do expect I'm going to need to buy one more ball of this, which in terms of dye lot, I think this yarn is going to be really forgiving. I'm not really concerned about it not matching 100%. I'm just going to see how far I get with the 6 balls I have and then decide if I need to buy another one. I don't want it to be too cropped. I also think I don't love the bell sleeve on this. I don't think it's a very suitable sleeve for me. So I think what I'm going to do is just knit it straight down and probably actually follow what I did for my Gallant sweater, which is a very similar shape to it, and use that for the sleeves. So probably I can save some yarn by not doing that bell sleeve, which maybe will allow me to not have to dip into a 7th ball. I think this and the staple skirt are my main focuses for the upcoming weeks. I also would like to maybe cast on an accessory of some kind. But I actually think what I'm going to do for November is do a focus on hibernating whips. So I have 2 hibernating whips, which are my Turtle Dove Shawl by Sari Nordland and my Berlin Scarf by Suzanne Muller. And I put those on hold last year because winter was over. I didn't want to work on them anymore. But I would like to actually have those finished pieces. So I think in November, I don't know what catchy name to give it, but basically I'm just going to have a finish my hibernating whips month and maybe just take one weekend. My Berlin scarf is so close. I have half of the fringe on one side and then all the fringe left on another side. That's probably a day of work if I just buckle down and do it. And on my Turtle Dove Shawl, I'm already halfway through. I think I already started the decreases. So again, that's probably like a couple days of work to finish it. I think I'm going to focus on those 2 accessories before casting on any new ones. Then I have these 2 garments, and then maybe this is a great transition into acquisitions and plans. So for acquisitions, other than the yarn I just showed you, which was from Lee, the Eco Soft from Asayer, I also bought yarn for my kind of mini cowl on the zipper. I couldn't even remember the name of it, on the Zipper Sweater Light by PetiteKnit. So I mentioned this last video that I have bought this nougat yarn, and I'll put up a picture here of what it looked like on the website versus what I actually got. And I feel like in the light in this office today, they're probably going to look exactly the same. But this I would classify as the light truffle color. So I have a light truffle yarn, which is what my sweater number 8 is in. This is very close to that, and maybe this swatch will be a better representation. So the nougat was meant to be a bit of a melange heathered kind of color. I see very little heathering in this swatch. So while I like this brown and I think it really suits me, it is not what I pictured for my zipper sweater. So I do still intend to cast this on, but I will say getting this yarn kind of lessened my excitement about the project itself. I was really disappointed in the color of it. I was much more expecting this kind of rich, heathery brown color, and that's not what it was. And it's also why I went with the Filcolana yarn. This will be kind of the color of my zipper sweater. The swatch is bang on in terms of gauge, so I am ready to cast this on whenever. So maybe I'll just do that this weekend. I don't know. I don't really know what to do about this sometimes. I hate when you get yarn. I hate shopping for yarn online sometimes because it's so hard to tell, especially for neutrals, what way it leans. Is it warm? Is it cool? Is it dark? Is it light? And I really thought, I'd gone through every brown on this and I was pretty confident in my choice. And then I think, especially with Filcolana, I always kind of get screwed on the color. It never looks exactly as I was expecting it to. So I'm just gonna have to make the best of it, and then perhaps, again, maybe I dye it darker in the future if I need to, but I don't want to have that start to be the habit of, oh, I'm just going to dye everything because I bought the wrong yarn. I'd like to just buy the right yarn. And then the second acquisition that I have is the Gepard Pura Lana yarn, which is 50% wool, 50% alpaca, and 50 grams for 115 meters. So this is a DK weight yarn, and I bought it because I really want to knit like an oversized basic stockinette sweater. And I'm eyeing two of my favorite things knitwear patterns right now. First being the sweater number 11 light, and the other one is sweater number 9 light. So both of those sweaters basically have exactly the same gauge. So that's why I was like, I'm just gonna buy this yarn and then make a decision about which one I wanna cast on. I originally was planning that I don't want a turtleneck, funnel neck, turtleneck. I was thinking I wanted this to be more of a crew neck. I am kind of coming around now. The more I look at sweater number 11 light, I am starting to think maybe a turtleneck wouldn't be the worst thing. I believe I did buy enough yarn to accommodate it. But originally, the reason I was thinking of sweater number 11 is, I can't remember, sorry, who the Instagram account is, but I will find it and insert it. She has a version of sweater number 11 light that I have saved many, many times in my favorites on Instagram, I realized. And it's a version where she just does a folded collar. And I think it looks so polished. And the sweater's nice because you do just come back and do the neckline at the end. So I figure I can cast on, knit a bit of the body to see how it's fitting overall, and then do the folded collar like I was planning, see if I like it. If not, take it out and then go in and do the turtleneck. I think it looks good as both. I just really want to make sure that this is like a nice, comfy, oversized look that I'm actually going to wear. And I struggle with turtlenecks just to see if they're going to be very practical in Amsterdam, where it doesn't get really, really cold here. I have turtlenecks, I wear them a little bit, but I really want this to be a piece that I'm going to throw on a lot. And I think adding any kind of substantial neckline to it will immediately make it less wearable for me. So I do want to try maybe both necklines, see how I feel. And this is another one where I don't know if I'm like in love with the color. I really struggled. There was a kind of, I think it was called Clay Rose, which was more of a grayish pink. And then this is Oat. And I really went back and forth between the two. I was thinking the Clay Rose might have been a bit too gray for me, but now I'm thinking that might have been the better choice. I do think, and I have some overhead lighting, so maybe not the best. I think this color will look nice. I don't have anything else in this color right now, so maybe I just need to start working with it and then see how I feel. And I think it's just in general, I don't tend to work with any neutrals like this. I'm trying to think if I have any sweater that I've knit other than in that kind of grayish white that I keep using. I don't knit a lot in like really neutral colors lately. So this is new to me and I think I just need to try it. I do always feel like I'm missing a neutral in my wardrobe. So this is the moment. I'm gonna try this, see how I feel. And yeah, worst case, I guess I can also sell this yarn if I'm not happy with it. But I'm excited to cast on just a basic stockinette because I ordered this yarn actually a few weeks ago with the intent of casting it on with my staple skirt. And then they were back ordered, so they didn't have enough yarn to send me, and therefore I had to wait 2 weeks. So that's why I also went ahead and just cast on the Winnie sweater because I didn't have this yarn yet. So now I'm kind of scratching the stockinette itch because I have 2 stockinette projects right now, and maybe I need to figure out after the Braidy Loop what my next textured pattern is, and I think that's where I will probably end up buying yarn for the Aegyoknit cardigan, which is that brioche cardigan from PetiteKnit. And then the very final acquisition is not yarn, but I've alluded to it in this episode, and it is dye. So I'm going to be filming a whole separate episode on this, but I have decided that I really want to go back and fix some of the knits that I'm not happy with. So I have a few that I'm going to be doing some surgery on or dyeing. And one of them is my weekend slipover V-neck, which is in that camel brown that I've said many times I don't really wear. I have decided that I do like the overall fit of it and I really want to try to make it work. So I'm thinking if I dye it this dark brown color, maybe that will help. And so I want to give it a chance before just deciding to give it away. I did do a ton of research. I went down such a rabbit hole of dyeing knits, and surprisingly, I found it really hard to find good quality content on this. A lot of people do say you should be using the acid dyes, but they just seem like way more work. You have to worry about the water being at the right temperature. I was really worried about felting my project, and with the RIT dye, maybe it's not like the best quality, but it does seem the easiest. Like you basically get a tub, I can get a plastic container, you heat some water up, you pour this in, and then once the water goes back down to a normal temperature, then you put your knit in, it sits there for a while. And from what I've seen of other people's projects where they're using them, it does seem like it achieves what they want. So I'm gonna start here, see how I like it. I do have my Sunday socks that are also in the camel. I'm gonna put my Sunday socks in the color dye first, make sure that it achieves what I want, and then use it on my actual slipover. But this seems pretty approachable if you're to use a dye and you just want to get started. I'll let you know what happens. I know Jackie from Jackie's Making recently used the RIT dye for one of her slipovers and she ended up felting her piece, but that seemed to have more to do with moving the yarn around in the bath and kind of agitating the material. So I think if I'm just really careful about that, hopefully it won't happen to me. The color of her project actually seems to have turned out really well. So I'm hopeful. I think she actually used the same color. And then I also just bought the color fixative, which was recommended so that the color stays to the piece. It doesn't bleed as much. So stay tuned for how that goes. I will be posting a video probably in November. Yeah, see what happens here. I would like to get this done pretty soon. So that is the big knitting update for today. I think definitely really happy with the finished objects that I have and the progress that I've made on things. Super excited to have some new projects on my needles finally. It feels like it's been a while and I'm still in like super high knitting mojo mode. I want to do all the things. I want to cast on everything and it's just not possible. So I do need to be a bit more mindful of not having too many whips on my needles, and that's why I've been trying to finish some stuff up before casting on new. I'm definitely in a stage of just maybe buying yarn before I'm really ready to cast on, and I don't want to get into that habit. I also, it's hard to see in here, but my knitting like storage is getting a bit messy and I really want to go in at some point in the next few weeks and just clean stuff up, maybe do a bit of a yarn stash buster. I have a whole bunch of single balls in that I'd love to just get rid of. I have sock yarns I know I'm never going to use because I don't like making socks. So if I do end up kind of selling some of that stuff, I will go ahead and post it on Instagram. So as always, if you like this video, please don't forget to like and comment. I really appreciate it. It helps my channel grow. And if you want to stick around for more podcast episodes, but also additional content, don't forget to subscribe and turn on bell notifications. I do post podcast episodes pretty regularly, at least every 3 weeks. Hopefully we will get down to 2 weeks. Thanks so much for sticking around this long if you've made it here, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.